morning at NTV.
The top of the hour brings us into that conversation that has been on the talking lips of the business community here in Uganda, and that is on the backbone of the proposed ban on the used clothes importation. Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni last week did make an announcement on the ban of the importation of used clothes into the East African countries, saying it stifles the development of local textile industries and that the clothes belonged to dead Westerners. You do have local manufacturers complaining of the dumping of second-hand apparel swamping the market here in Uganda, and of course it also brings into context the undermining of Uganda's ability to climb the value chain of cotton as well as textile industry. And at least 70% of garments donated to charity in Europe and the United States end up here in Africa, and this is according to Oxfam, a British charity. To help us understand this conversation deeper, we want to first go on ground with Stephen Mbide and talk to the traders directly, those who trade in second-hand clothes. We want to find out from them what's going to be the impact of this ban on the economy, on the trade, and also on their livelihoods as people and citizens of Uganda. Good morning to you, Stephen.
Indeed, these are used called the old clothes or used clothes and textiles downtown in Kampala here. Era wano wetuli wanyidwanga mu kajja okumpi ne paaka enkadde owulira bazimba bbiri osootunda olugoye lusobola okuba 2,000 nga luno.
Olugoye tutandikira twalusaze ndipo tanga twakagireeta tutandikira 2,000 n'okudda waggulu. Neno bino bya tuzisa paka wansi. Kati buli lunaku olukeerawo oba lunaku olutuuka nga tuzisala nga zidda mu 5 nga zidda mu 4.
Naye omuntu n'agenda mu factory oyo nayo gye bazijja n'akola olugoye n'olutunda 2,000.
Nandi kisinziira material gy'oba okozeseza oba material gye mba mufunye akaseera.
Omukulu yagambye nti engoye nga zino lwaki nkubuuza ni 2,000 ndabira ddala nga kyekisoboka kubanga olugoye omuntu ayambala olugoye lwa 2,000. Ndabira ddala nga kino ekintu oba oli awo kituufu omukulu kyagambye ni engoye baziwere kubanga 2,000 ddala.
Yani kalize banafulumya tumanyi nti banazituwera ku 2,000 ngaffe nga tuzitunda. Ayinza okuzifulumya nga ye za bbeeyiko okusinga kuzina eziva ebweru. So kakati nze ngamba kyandibadde kyangu kugamba nti asalewo mulundi gumu nti azisale zirekerawo okuyingira mu ggwanga. Kyandibadde kituufu.
Kakati engoye zonna okuva ku Underwear, Bulega, Gomesi, bintu byonna bikadde bimutunda.
Byonna bikadde tetulinawo kipya wadde.
Twagala kuwagira amafactory gaffe ga wano kuwagira enkola gye bayita bubu eyokuwagira kola ebyaffe wano tunda ebyaffe wano amakole bwegali wano gakola
Uganda simanyi bikoze bitya. Bubu wakigayo kitya sibitegeera bulungi naye nganze ngamba zandisigadde nga zijja nga naffe tufulumya kuba tetunaba kuyimirira bulungi kubeerawo nga lisobola okweyimirizawo ngaffe nga Uganda.
Okay. Ebintu nga bino Obulega, Underwear ne Magomesi nebiteeteeyi ebintu bikadde mukulu byabafu tukole byaffe wano. Amakolero agaffe wano tugawagire gabakolera emirimu abantu bafunemu emirimu gawe omusolo gasobole okweyimiriza kubanga bagakoleddwa kati ng'ag'embaali. Tugawagire
kirupu ogawagira tukiganye era oyinza okuyingira mu hamu oyo hamu mulimu ebipya kadeni ate naffe tuguza abantu abawansi n'abali kale abeesobola. Kati kintunza olugoye luno 2,000 wabula nti waliwo omuntu agenda okujja ng'ayinamu ezo zokka ng'esigaddemu za transport. Kati kiba kisobola omwanguyiro obutagenda mu hamu gula lugoye lwa 2,000 n'asalawo agula olw'2,000 asobola okugenda afisseemu transport. Zinaabanga ziweze agende mu hamu.
Kambuze ku maama ono waliwo omukyala ali mu kugula yambuulire abawagira nnyo kale okay waliwo n'atunda engatto enkadde waliwo n'amakolero agaffe wano gakola engatto enkadde engatto empya lwaki gwe oguza abantu engatto enkadde?
Amannya nze bampitako ko Jamaica, omusajja muwagizi wa maanyi, omusajja wa Kabaka. Ekitunzisa engatto enkadde mu butuufu bannayuganda tukyaliyala nnyo, tukyaliyala. Teri muntu ayagala agula kintu kikadde, buli omu ayagala kipya, naye olw'okusinziira enfuna yaffe pakati akagatto nga kano nkatunda 3-5. Oli abalamu nti no kayinamu ekitwalo kye ne bupeya 3 okitegeera, naye engatto empya etandikirwako ya mitwalo 3 ate ojambalira ennaku 4 neggwawo. Naye kano bw'okayisaamu wuzi, era nze mbakakasamu ejjajja byagamba mbu bino bisimanya biki bya mirambo. Singa twongera wakiri ku ekonomi etutta era ekitutundisa bino ebintu. Jjajja nze yonna gy'oli nze nkuliiramu mwana, tuliyala kyekitundisa ebintu.
Nga babiri abasembayo bambulire ku nsonga kubanga njala kuddayo eri Priscilla Regina Naroga ne Chris Igenyi kubanga balina abakugu nga Issa Sekito omugezi wa Kasiita kosa ne omulangira John Walugembe. Mukulu, engoye enkadde zino nebyo dda mivumba.
Gya mivumba era mukama wange.
Kakati kiri mu senemeka?
13,000.
13 omuntu nga yambala.
Era omuntu nga yambala.
Owenyumiriza mu mivumba gino?
Emivumba njenyumirizaamu kubeera gimbezezaawo kakaseera. Naye
kiri kino bagamba nti mugenda kudda mukulu aguddewo olutalo, agamba olutalo lwagguddewo, n'ekika mu kkubo lye lyonna olyemesa emivumba okujja kuno agenda kufaafagana naye.
Muzeeyi yandiba mutuufu mu ngeri ye, naye nga abantu babanyigiriza ku nsonga eno ddala tuli bangi, kubanga wano wetujja ekyokulya, wetujja school fees, obulamu wetubutambuliza. Kati kwegamba abeera nga atujje ku lusuku ate n'atutwala mu kusabiriza.
Njogereko n'abali rede. Mukyalo ono ogamba otya? Ogenda kukola kinga emivumba bagigobye?
Sibimanyi nnyo ebyo byombuuza.
Naye nga engoye z'okuna. Okay, kansembeyo n'omukulu ono abatunda engoye enkadde. Gwe osembayo? Okutunda engoye enkadde bagenda kukuwola engoye zino enkadde z'otunda. Pulezidenti yagambye zino agenda kugulawo olutalo okola nga tezongera kudda kuyingira Uganda.
Muzeeyi mwana atulekemu. Muzeeyi oyo muyita vulugu. Oyinza kungamba nti owera ngoye enkadde mwana. Ate nga n'abaana bennyini obalaba, sijja kwogera linnya naye abaana be abamu bendaba bazambala engoye enkadde. Kati vulugu wa muzeeyi mwana. Katukole byebyo byange.
Okay, abavubuka wano wansi downtown near the Old Tax Park bali mu kutunda ngoye enkadde. Priscilla, these are some of the young people in downtown Kampala dealing in used clothes and shoes, and the president says that he's going to wage a war against all those who continue to import used textiles and shoes in Uganda, because he wants to see that the government tries to create some effort in promoting Bubu, that's Buy Uganda, Build Uganda, and trying to see that the factories here in Uganda that are dealing in producing clothes are at least supported in that way. And for him, he sees that ban on importation of old or used textiles will be giving it a boost, that program of Bubu. Back to you, Priscilla Regina Naroga, with the guest that is John Walugembe and Issa Sekito. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to highlight these issues, views from the people down here in Kampala.
Well, thank you so much, Stephen Bide, for bringing us closer to the people and the people's voice on this matter, because it's paramount. Whatever is spoken of in this room is definitely directly impacting on those people. Whatever is directed of the president is a direct impact to that very community. In studio with me, we do have Mr. Issa Sekito, who's a spokesperson for Kasiita, to help us understand this conversation deeper, because he interacts with these people on a daily basis. We also do have Mr. John Walugembe, the Executive Director of the Small Medium Enterprises, joining us for this debate. But let me start with Mr. Sekito.
Yes.
You interact with these people on a daily. You have been with them for a long time. Talk to us about the impact of second-hand clothes trading and how it has transformed the communities down there, the business community.
To begin with, the contribution of the second-hand items to the government or the country. We start with how much tax they pay. I tell you that it is the third most paying import after fuel, and therefore at a time like this when we dearly need a tax to bridge the gap between what we are expected to pay and what we get from outside is very crucial. You have heard the people say, if the people talk like that, it shows you how much impact such a business has on the entire spectrum of the country. I'm telling you that 90% of the boutiques across the countryside, the moving markets, the small businesses on the road, 90% of these, even more, are used items. And therefore, if you are to get the bigger picture of how much employment the second-hand items have on the economy, you need to travel across the world. You need to go to some of these markets, weekly markets in every part of the country. They mention the reasons of reliability, pricing, and all that. So people survive and thrive because of the second-hand items. Some people even today put on torn clothes if you go deep into the villages, even when 2,000 Uganda shillings can pick a shirt, no matter how it looks. But people even use hand shoeing to repair them. The economy is limping so much that affording a new cloth is still for a different class of people. So in my opinion, it is very important that while we promote and we like the growth of the industry in the garments and the textile sector, it needs to be very prospective. We need to phase. Like we said, it's so demeaning. We should not bring underpants. We should not bring old vests. We should not bring all this kind of demeaning clothes, petties. But for shirts, coats, skirts, shoes and others, we need to phase them out, not through a directive, but through a planned approach. Because of the impact on the economy, the impact on the taxation, and the entire people. Employment, if you see how many people are employed in a factory, if it is the biggest, you can talk about 500 or 400 people. If you talk about second-hand clothes, especially in the textile sector, you are talking about the entire population. Many people are employed there, and therefore getting alternative has not been easy. For example, while the government is talking this, you know that over 47 lines of cloth in Uganda attract a tax in kilos. You remember the struggle we had with the government, convincing them that you don't need to levy taxes on kilos when items are bought in pieces. The new cloth has restriction to a tune of 47 lines. And therefore, when you talk about t-shirts, when you talk about vests, they will tell you these are hand-woven. It is a struggle. I was struggling with the Uganda Revenue Authority recently to convince them that the vests that a China importer or a local person imported from China were machine woven, and you are saying they are hand woven. And the implication was, if you are to pay 100 million for hand woven, you would pay like a 20 for machine woven, because they want to promote the local producers. So there is no Chinese today that can make massive production using hand. No, these machines are phased out, and the majority of the items coming from those countries that are developed in the textile industry are using machines. What does this mean? You are stopping me from bringing new clothes by putting a tax in kilos. And the implication is like 3, 4, 10 times as much as weighing as in rates.
Okay.
As East Africa community and the region, we had agreed that for textile sector, we impose a 35% import duty across the line. Uganda is still insisting on 47 lines. So many importers downtown have now stopped bringing some of the new clothes because of this restrictive tax. At the same time, you are talking about stopping the second hand. Are people going to walk bare or are going to be naked? We so much support and like industrialization, but we need to be cognizant of the fact that we mind about quality, we mind about capacity. Some people make orders in some of these companies that are saying they are producing. You go, you make an order of 5,000 pieces of t-shirts, you take 2 months. People who are ordering, it takes hours, and the few days for the ship to dock in Mombasa. Here,
from a foreign company
from a
versus
foreign,
a local
yes.
company.
So that
local
is
company will tell you that they don't have the
capacity.
And
We made a research.
It's not the quality. That
we made a research together with the director of economics or the economy at the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development. We saw that any factory producing textile in Uganda has less than 3% capacity of the demand.
Which
So,
is something that we have seen here, even
Yes.
as we were trying to navigate ourselves through COVID-19, Mr. Olugembe. Locally manufactured masks, up to this day, we are still waiting for masks that were meant to be distributed to Ugandans, locally made masks here in Uganda. The government did make payments, but not all of us got the 3 masks that we were supposed to be getting. And so you get to see that there's a challenge of capacity, but also quality. And now in that regard, from your analysis, when you have such a place where you're between a rock and a hard place, there's good quality that is coming in, but of second-hand value. And then you do have what should be first-class value, but it's not enough to service, the economy and also to service Ugandans as far as the garments and textile industry is concerned. How do we navigate this?
That. Okay, first of all, I don't believe that there's even a rock and a hard place to start with. I believe that the banning of second-hand clothes, well, the EAC took a decision in 2016 to ban used clothes, and they put a deadline of 2019 to have done that. Actually, but the biggest opposer to this decision was the US, because the US was going to lose 40,000 jobs with this decision. This year, the AFCFT has adopted a protocol on the banning of second-hand and used clothes. So in principle, that shouldn't be a problem. But for us, our concern at this point is that we are not making any effort to build capacity, because the whole point is to ensure that we have local capacity to produce these things. So it means all these people who are dealing in their boutiques and so on, they can be part of a broader apparel sector. And I want to make a distinction here. We have cotton, we have textiles, we have apparels. You can build a strong apparel sector even when you don't have cotton, like Bangladesh. So, but the challenge here is that the objective is tax collection. Okay, so you find that brand new clothes are heavily taxed. The idea is to promote local production. Used clothes are banned. Fabrics are taxed. So that the tax regime, therefore, doesn't seem to be coherent. Because if you are saying you want to promote local industry, you can say fine, then fabric we have zero import duty, or it's low. I think it's now 25% or something like that. Can be lowered because you don't have capacity to produce all this cotton. Your cotton industry has suffered for years. You need some time to build it up. So you can start by depending on imported apparel, and you build that capacity. Sure, you don't lose the jobs of these people who are trading and so on. And then over time, you're able to build that capacity. But as it is, this ban is premature, and it's just going to create problems.
Okay.
We need, if we are to ban, it needs to be phased, and it needs to be coupled with a capacity building program. We want to ensure that this sector can create up to 5 million jobs in this country. And in fact, you may find that at the moment, as you mentioned, maybe we have 1 million or so people employed in the sector somehow, boutiques and stuff like that. So you don't want to lose those jobs. How do you do that? You do that by ensuring that there's capacity. One, you have the right technology. Because now, these days, very small machines can ensure that you make a suit and so on. You don't need a huge factory line. You can have the textile mills, the nightils and so on. Those can concentrate, because we did a consultancy study on these things. If you look at nightil, for instance, they are take-on orders for the army, for what they were doing, army stuff for Zambia, for instance. It's a good thing because it's building exports. But then let's allow the small-scale people to concentrate. Exports,
but how many numbers are they covering still? It's in thousands compared to 45 million Ugandans that have.
Exactly. So let's not depend on one or two factory or textile mills. Let's ensure that SMEs are capacitated to do these things. Why should we wait for undergarments from Nitel? Okay. This can be done in Chiembe. So this
comes
is
at the backbone of the president commissioning 16 factories in Bali, all of which are going to be around textile. You do have industrialization coming up, but there was a debate about how even those industries or those factories are going to be facilitated. Let's talk about cotton itself. Recently, you see a challenge in cotton growing. Some farmers are being told not to grow cotton. Some who have grown the cotton, government is telling them don't harvest the cotton yet. It's not yet mature enough, and yet according to them, with the caliber of cotton that they've grown, maturity has already reached. So there's that challenge. So you end up having cotton going to waste. And then you look at the cotton growing fraternity itself. There seems to be cartelling in if we can't say that. You seem to have the Indians fully invested in cotton growing and wanting to have it for themselves, grow it here and then export it to India, make the finest of items and then bring them back here and sell them at a higher price. Mr. Sejito, I think that is a bit challenging also for government. If the president is speaking value addition, then the value addition should cut across the bar.
We went to Mbale before the president launched the factories, and our issue was a concern from the business community about some Chinese factory that is making jean skirts, khakis, and jean trousers. While people are importing these items, we went to see the capacity of one of the biggest companies that is in Mbale that is producing this. What they had done, they were now even hawking the jeans. They had established so far 3 shops. We went up to the Environmental Investment Authority to ask what did these people come to do? Was it manufacturing? So that while we want to promote the industrialization, we need to create a trade order. The dealers in these products, we are saying, can we do franchise? Can we do distributorship? Can government tell these people to do the production so that we do the selling? What essence, what is the economic sense in a factory producing massive clothes and then sell it to the final buyer? How about the people that in the chain of distribution of this business, in the chain of trade for all this time? So when we came back, we petitioned the Minister of Trade, Industry and Cooperatives and the Committee for Industry in Parliament, telling them that one, the investment code does not allow this. Do as per what your license is saying, produce, and let government create a platform for us to deal with these products so that we don't lose the employment that is already in existence. We are yet to hear the response from both the ministry and the parliament over this, and it's not one item. We liked the way the people of Goodwill Tiles did it. They have major dealers, and in 95% of all the shops dealing in ceramics do sell the items, despite the fact that they are still importing. But these ones, because of cost, everybody gets, so that the others are differentiated for quality. I want the Italy brand for whatever it is. But even if you look at the factors that are for the tiles and ceramics, the 85% of the raw material is in-sourced. The cement, the clay, only like 15% is gotten from outside. That means by the end of making one piece of tile, a Ugandan has already benefited from where they got the raw material. Look at the cotton industry now. How much of it do we produce? How much processing? We think that some factories, either in China or India, are compromising the textile sector growth, because India has now proven to be one of the largest producers of cotton, and they want to do it across Africa tactfully. So we don't need to fall prey victims to this. Government needs to be very wide, to use very wide open eyes to see. I had one of the prominent people in the name of Honorable Kadu Chiberu trying to propose a campaign to revamp the growth of cotton across the country. I don't know how much support such an idea has supported. So that the more cotton we have, the more incentives Ugandans will go into the processing of this cotton, so that the value chain creates value to the economy itself. And I am a practical trader. I travel very regularly. Therefore, I know even some of these manufacturers do blind government. They say we are producing, they produce only 20%, and the 80% is imported. In actual sense, the value addition that is claimed is not in effect. Secondly, there is a very, very big challenge, the timing. Look at the World Bank saying they are not going to give us money for our own issues, which are legitimate. The tax that is paid by these upcoming factories is deferred. Most of the times they have so many incentives. Imports that are related to the manufacturing are exempt of VAT in the interim. The machines and the machinery will not pay. And therefore, we shall have a gap of taxes in the interim. What this implies is that we need to face this very carefully. If this declaration was to work, the orders, some people make orders for 6 months. It's already being collected. And about health, we follow international fumigation standards. There is no danger as to health. If you are caught either in the UK, in the US, loading a container that is not properly fumigated, you face the price, they destroy at your cost as the supplier. So on that side, we are protected. What is very important now is to see how we phase out this.
When you speak of phasing out,
yes.
Mr. Olgembe, we have seen states that have tried phasing out in the 20th century, I think. Latin America did try the phasing out of second-hand clothing, and so they were trying to shield, again, their local industrialization from external competition. The result, however, you see presence of overpriced clothing, low quality production in terms of the things that were being put on the market, and then you do have the domestic market equally not being fully serviced and satisfied thereof. Are we not going to fall in the same nest of problems?
That's why we are saying that these are market issues. We are talking about demand and supply. Why are people buying second-hand clothes? It's because that's what they can afford. So if you're getting out of COVID and people's incomes have been compromised, and you're saying now we are going to put a ban, you must buy brand new clothes, you're interfering with the market kind of dynamics. So if you want to influence, if you want people to buy more brand new clothes, you have to tackle the supply side. That's why we are saying build capacity for local people to manufacture brand new clothes that are affordable. Why do I buy a used shirt at 20K if I can find a brand new shirt at that same price, good quality, and I use it? So I think for us, what we are saying is build capacity, because if you don't build capacity, then there's no utility to this ban. The reason we are saying let's manufacture here is that we want to keep the jobs here. The US, it's now us subsidizing the US economy. 40,000 jobs involved in this used market thing. And these things, they collect NGOs, churches, and stuff like that, and they dump here at a factory, and they are making 40,000 jobs in the US. That's why when Rwanda banned, the US said, no, we are going to review our AGOA status. The same with Uganda, the same with Kenya. Kenya and Uganda backtracked, Rwanda continued. So the other issue is that there's also now that geopolitical angle that as a country, if you're engaging the World Bank on the other issue, and then you're opening another front. Because for me, I look at this as engaging in, the president himself said that you cannot, if you want to fight, you cannot throw two punches in the opposite direction.
Exactly.
You master your energies and push in one direction. So if you are saying, let us first solve the quarrel we have with the World Bank, my view is that let all our focus be there. Let us resolve the World Bank question. If we want to handle the Mivumba issue, let us take time. Let us build capacity. Let us make sure we do it in a phased manner so that we don't shock the system in any way.
Okay,
yes.
All right. Let's go to the East African community. You do have countries importing a considerable amount of second-hand clothing as well as footwear. And I've had the privilege of interacting with traders from like Burundi and Kenya in this regard. And despite it being a small region, you're looking at imports having increased from $100 million in 2001, and now you're looking to 300 million plus in 2014. Where we stand today, definitely it's a lot because you get to see the employment on the one end. It speaks a lot in how much money we are getting out of these imports, especially on the African continent. It begs the question, the economic impact of second-hand clothes to the region and also to the individual state, Uganda, Mr. Sechifto.
Kenya got it somehow right, and Tanzania, because they did a study and they concentrated on two major items. That is kikoi and the kitenge. If you want to import kikoi and kitenge in both countries, you need to pay dearly because it is the only item attracting 50% import duty because they have capacity. Even other countries go to Tanzania and Kenya to buy kikoi, to buy kitenge.
Yes.
Uganda needs to copy a leaf from this regional example. We are always tasking the Ministry of Industry, the President, what are the few items that you can take off the list of imports so that you do maximum concentration on those items and you perfect. One, you'll have capacity to produce enough so that because of economies of scale, the prices will come down. But now, you mentioned 47 lines. Which concentration are you going to make on the 47 products? And which factories are there to bridge the gap? This is something very, 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 very strange. Even Kenya and Tanzania that massively use kikoi and kitenge are also importing the second-hand items, and massively so. This means the demand is still high, nothing beyond that. And you know, science and technology not need to be taken for granted. We used to have these big phones in the offices, you remember. We now got the ones with the smaller heads from the telecom companies. Today, I was admiring the phone of the Mulangira Walugembe. If you give me that phone, in a few days I said it, I can ride an old vehicle. This phone can make an order, but we never had somebody says now you no longer bring telephones with buttons. They are being phased out automatically because on supply, they are new phones. They grade themselves. I don't think affordability. I don't think anybody near state, anybody near ministers, anybody near big families with enough income can put on old cloth. Automatically things phase out of themselves. Class. So what we need to do is maximize production. And this is capacity building. Capacity does not mean blocking. Capacity does not mean banning. The incentives, if the incentives so far given to the textile industry are not enough, can we think about others? So that other than, because you are competing with the world, Uganda cannot be isolated. The country is now one global village. If I want orders today from Guangzhou, I use my phone, I use it to pay, I use it for everything. In orders, 3 weeks,
use it to track
maximally 1 month, I will be offloading. Meanwhile, you go to textile, any textile industry here, you make an order, take 3-4 months. By the time you are offloading, I've sold 10 containers. That's not business.
After a month, they tell you, we have not yet gotten the raw materials.
When we are taking back a children sometime, when they had put taxes of kilos on every textile, I'm telling you, a uniform reached 250,000. A simple uniform for a kid. People almost wanted to take every cloth to the schools and ban the uniforms, until somehow government relaxed a bit and removed some of these items from the restrictive tax.
Which, on that kind of levy, I think it should be the opposite, so as to promote
the new cloth,
the ban
lower the tax on the new items, and then raise the taxes on the used ones, so that it becomes expensive.
How can that, Mr. Olugembe, especially for the side of revenue gain?
No, short-term revenue gain should not be the primary consideration when making policy. You have to look long-term. Because the other things, if you generate a lot of money and 2 million people are unemployed, that's a problem. See? So this money that you've generated may not even be enough to address the issues. So what we are saying is that government needs to have a complete assessment of the sector. What are the capacities? What are the gaps? You've privatized all the ginaries. You've privatized the giving out of inputs to farmers. You've made it difficult to, so these farmers are cheated in terms of price in some instances. So how do you ensure? We are not saying government needs to regulate price.
And you're leaving Ugandans to do the farming and foreign investors to do
then the farmers get discouraged because the inputs are expensive. At the end of the day, when they go to sell their cotton, they're not getting what they deserve. And then you cannot have a situation where 90% of all the cotton that we produce, high-grade cotton lint, is being exported. This is a problem, and I think what government ought to do as a starting point is to ban that. Why are we exporting cotton lint? See, instead of banning the entry of second-hand, first ban cotton lint,
so that we have
capacity.
Cotton.
So that we have cotton, build capacity. Who is exporting the cotton lint? Because so I think those are issues. We need to look at the cotton sector, but I also insist apparels can grow on its own, and that's where small scale. If you look at Bangladesh, 4 to 5 million jobs. People just have these arcades and people are making suits, people are making what the whole of Chiembe and all that surrounding area should be a hub for textiles. But you find that it's extremely difficult. You put tax on fabric, so it's hard for them. You put tax on this, tax on that. They have to pay very high rent. Because government can even invest in that structure and say it's like a... Because if you're building a business park for these international investors, you also build the business park, a free one for these ones. You say you occupy, you pay a token fee of 200,000 to cater for the utilities, and then work, because you know that you're creating jobs. So for me, the challenge we have is that we are very foreign investor focused. You see, because now the president went sure he was mesmerized by the progress, which is good, of course. We are happy if we have this kind of progress. And it's possible that the investors overpromised. Oh, Your Excellency,
if we did
this, if you give us more things, you know, as a way of bargaining. And the president said, okay, because for him it's a swift act. He doesn't wait for stories, papers. He just says,
research.
Yeah, says, do you think you have? Yes, okay, banned. So what we are saying is that let's take time to ensure that we don't shoot ourselves in the foot. We make sure that we create opportunity and unlock opportunities on the apparel side, on the textiles, I mean the mills, the nightils and so on and so forth. On the cotton side, we need to look at this sector again and revamp it. And we also need to speak with one voice. Do we think cotton is a sector that people can rely on or not? Because some government officials are telling people, no, cotton is a crop of poverty. See? But why is it a crop of poverty? It's because you have certain people within the value chain that are manipulating the farmers.
Okay, all right. Speaking of revamping, let's look at it on the East African level. We do have Rwanda here that is actually making plans to set up garments factory to support this initiative. You do have Kenya on the other side also. The apparel industry is booming so much, employing about 300,000 plus people currently. And for us in Uganda, when you look at the statistics from the Uganda Manufacturers Association, the listed companies or factories in garments and footwear production are about 30.
You know,
so it begs the question, as a region, how can we look to boom?
Yeah, it's something that Mr. Rugembo was talking about, this apparel kind of thing. You go to Ham Towers now. If you count how many small machines that are there in thousands, producing every brand that you need, government needed to copy leaf from there. What can we do that so that we have at least 10 kinds of hams of local people producing the textile, new garments? They are the ones that they approve. Any fashion you want downtown. But look at the tax they pay for the raw material in clothes form, Jola. Look at the machines themselves. They have no exemption because they don't reach the capacity of the foreign investors. Why don't we learn by experience? People always quote Rwanda. Rwanda did not choose industrialization as a mode of growth. They chose tourism and services. So if you think you are going to approach it the Rwanda way, you are getting wrong, because for us we said value addition and industrialization. The policies that we need to employ are a bit very distinct from what Rwanda is taking as the model. Therefore, I think we need a public-private partnership approach. We have engaged the manufacturers of textile in Uganda. We have engaged the association of these small sewing machines. They have a big association, over 2,500 members. Each has not less than 2 machines, these small sewing machines. We told them, how can you, as URA, create a package for these manufacturers so that on top of what they are doing, they have incentives that are tailored towards them to grow the capacity. If this is to be a regional approach, I am telling you, we are going to create the jobs, we are going to make the new clothes, and the old items will die a natural death. I will not go to buy a shirt for 20,000 shillings when it is used. Yes, a new one is 25,000. I'll struggle to get an extra 5,000 and afford a new one. Now we'll look also at the Bureau of Standards. The capacity of the Bureau. When we are establishing or introducing PIVOC, pre-import verification for conformity, Kasita was arguing the government, you people, you are over-concentrating on testing the goods from outside. How if the same manufacturers transfer their factories to Uganda and now make the fake things from home? Can we also raise the capacity of the Bureau of Standards so that even locally made items can be certified? ISO. I am a representative of Gabriel Register, one of the international ISO certifying companies in the world. The number of customers I have in Tanzania and Kenya multiply 10 times those I have gotten in Uganda. When you talk about ISO certification, Ugandans pretend they are not hearing you. Now they are the same people complaining about quality. Where are you going to sell if you don't want to certify? So these are factors that we must...
It's the certifying that maybe you tap into the greater market.
Yes, okay. Even Sudan, saying you cannot accept items from Uganda with a bureau that has been stable for over 40 years. This is not good.
Ugandan products have started from farming, now it has entered textile. It's quite challenging.
Yes. So we need to concert efforts.
From the East African region, I know that in 2011 the EAC adopted the industrialization policy and strategy. Though surprisingly, the strategy does not seem to identify with the garment sector. And so that's challenging. It begs the question that if we're going to be having these kind of policies, if the ban on used garments and footwear imposed at the regional level makes little sense, especially when it comes to the measures needed to be set up by the single countries for our case here in Uganda. So at the end of the day, undesirable effects are going to be coming through. It looks like it's going to be promoting illegal trade if it should go, if government should take heed of it. And it begs the bigger question, who will stand to lose, Mr. Olgen?
Okay, so first of all, I don't think, if you look at the industrialization strategy of the EAC, it prioritizes agro-processing. Now, if we are talking about the textiles and apparel sector, we're talking about agro. Of course, apparels, if you're importing, may not really fall in that category. But if you're adding value to cotton, then it can be termed as agro-processing. And in fact, they've moved. That's how the EAC Council of Ministers came up with that directive in 2016 to ban the importation of used clothes. Now, the challenge I have with the EAC is too much talk and little action. And I think it's a disease that we Africans have generally. We speak big. It's like the African continent where we are going to trade across Africa, 30 million people, blah, blah, but we are doing nothing, you know. So the ban was put in place. By 2019, we were supposed to do something, nothing was done. That same strategy talks about building capacity, supply side capacity. Nothing has been done by any of the government. So I think for me, it's not so much the lack of policy, it's the lack of the will to do what we've said that we would do. The US cannot be making 40,000 jobs out of the EAC alone. You see? So it means, actually, when you look at it, maybe that is us supporting some of these economies. Because if East Africa alone is creating 40,000 jobs, then they say, oh, we are giving you tariff-free and import-free access for you, because they know you don't have capacity. See, they have killed your capacity. Now they are saying, now it's okay, you bring. But you can bring nothing because definitely you don't have that capacity. So I think for us, my advice to government would be, let's build our capacity. If the US doesn't want to give us access to their market through AGOA, so be it. It's far anyway. Let's try to take advantage of the regional markets, because that would be important. But we need to do it in a phased and planned manner. Let's start from a strategy. Let's come up with a proper strategy on how to revamp this sector. Like I've said, it can employ 5 million people. Low-skilled people, you don't need a lot of education to be employed in this sector. All these kadamas we are taking to the Middle East.
Also, DIT is here to support this initiative.
Can remain here and gain decent employment. So for me, I think the country needs to think seriously about this sector as a platform for job creation.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Mr. John Walukembe, and also Mr. Issa Sechito, for your submissions on these conversations looking into the proposed ban on used clothes importation. We're going to be taking a short breather, but when we return, we're going to be having more conversations on ground. Do stay with us.